In the royal palace of an ancient kingdom, two tiny cries filled the night. Two princes were born just minutes apart. But while the kingdom rejoiced, one queen hid a deadly secret beneath her smile. Before dawn, a living child would be gone, and a dead one would take his place.
Hello, family. Welcome to African Stories That Touch. Please subscribe, like this video, and share it with your loved ones. And don't forget to turn on post notifications so you never miss any of our powerful stories. Now, sit back and listen carefully, because this story will leave you speechless.
It was a stormy night. The sky roared like drums of thunder, and rain beat hard on the palace roof. Inside the golden room, Queen Morenike held her newborn baby close to her chest. Tears ran down her face, happy tears. For many years, she had prayed for a child, and at last, her arms were no longer empty. "My son," she whispered softly, "my little prince." Hamid, Bolu, smiled through tired eyes. "The king will be proud, my queen. You have given him an heir." But then, from across the corridor, another cry rose, a stronger one, clear and loud. Morenike's smile faded. "That is the other queen, Fadesiwa," she murmured. Bolu nodded. "Yes, my queen. She also has a son."
At that moment, the royal priest entered, his robe wet from the storm. He bowed deeply. "The gods have spoken," he said. "Queen Fadesewa's child cried first. He shall be the crowned prince." Morenike's joy froze inside her. She stared at him as if she hadn't heard right. "Her child came first?" "Yes, my queen," the priest replied kindly. "Yours was born moments after." The priest left, and silence filled the room. The firelight flickered across Morenike's face, proud, tired, and now filled with pain. She turned toward the window. Rain slid down the glass like tears. Her voice came out low and shaking. "First, she took my husband's love. Now she takes my child's crown." Bolu stepped closer. "Please, my queen, don't speak that way." Morenike gave a small, bitter laugh. "The gods have never listened to me, Bolu. Not when I cried, not when I begged. If they will not change my fate, I will." Bolu's eyes widened. "What do you mean?" But Morenike said nothing more. She only looked into the dark storm outside, and her face grew hard as stone.
Late that night, when the palace slept and the rain softened to a whisper, Morenike rose from her bed. She wrapped herself in a dark robe and carried a small lantern. "Come," she said to Bolu. Bolu hesitated. "Where are we going, my queen?" "To fix what the gods have broken." They walked through the quiet hall, their footsteps soft as secrets. They stopped near the servants' quarters, where a poor woman had just lost her newborn. The room still smelled of herbs and tears. "The baby died," Bolu whispered. "The mother has gone to wash her face. She does not know we are here." Morenike nodded slowly. "Then she will not see what we must do." Bolu's hands shook. "Please, my queen, don't do this. It is wrong." Morenike turned her cold eyes toward her. "Wrong? No, this is justice." She lifted the still baby, wrapped him gently, and whispered a shaky prayer. "Forgive me, little one. You will not be forgotten." Then she walked, silent as the rain, to Queen Fadesewa's room. The guards outside were asleep. Inside, Queen Fadesewa rested peacefully, with her baby on her chest. A beautiful, healthy boy.
The soft glow of an oil lamp touched her calm face. Morenike stood at the doorway for a long time. One step, then another. She leaned over the bed, lifted the living baby, and placed the still one in its place. Her hands shook, but her eyes were cold. The real prince gave a small sigh in her arms, his tiny fingers curling around her necklace. Morenike froze. For a brief moment, she almost broke, almost put him back. But then she whispered, "No one will ever know." She turned and disappeared into the night.
Outside, the rain had stopped. The world smelled of wet leaves and new earth. Morenike walked quickly through the garden path, her robe brushing against the grass. Bolu followed, crying quietly. When they reached the forest's edge, the wind was cool and still. An owl called somewhere high in the trees. Morenike stopped beneath a great iroko tree. She looked down at the sleeping baby in her arms. He was warm, peaceful, and innocent. Bolu fell to her knees. "Please, my queen, let's go back. The gods will punish us." "The gods have punished me long enough." She knelt, laid the child gently on the soft ground, and wrapped him in her silk cloth. "Forgive me," she whispered, "but you were born into the wrong mother's arms." She turned and walked away, her robe dragging through the wet soil. Behind her, the baby whimpered softly, his voice tiny against the wide, endless forest. When morning came, the sky was bright and clear. Birds sang, and the palace came alive again. Servants hurried about with towels and perfumes, preparing for the king's visit to his wives. The king smiled as he entered Queen Fadishewa's chamber, ready to hold his firstborn. But the moment he stepped inside, a scream tore through the air. The midwife was kneeling beside the bed, her hands over her mouth. Queen Fadishewa clutched the still baby, crying so hard her body shook. The king ran to her side. "What happened?" The midwife stammered, "My king, the child, he did not survive the night." The king's face went pale. He turned slowly toward the door as Morenike entered, pretending to be shocked. "Oh no!" she gasped, covering her mouth. "The gods have taken him." The king leaned against the wall, tears filling his eyes. "Only one child lives now. Yours, Morenike." Her head bowed. "May the gods comfort her," she whispered, but behind her lowered lashes, her heart leapt with secret joy. The palace mourned for 7 days. Drums beat slowly, night after night. Queen Fadishewa sat beside her baby's grave, silent and broken. And Morenike smiled through her tears as the king named her son the new heir. "He shall be called Adewale, the child born with a crown." Trumpets sounded, gifts poured in, and no one in the kingdom knew that the real prince was still alive, alone in the forest.
When the morning sun touched the iroko tree, a hunter named Bamidele walked by, tired from chasing antelope. He heard a faint cry and stopped. "Who's there?" he called. Then he saw it, a small bundle wrapped in fine silk lying at the roots of the tree. He lifted it gently, and his eyes filled with wonder. "It's a baby," he whispered. "A royal baby." He looked around, but no one was there. The forest was quiet, except for the sound of his own breath. He held the child close. "Whoever left you here, my son, didn't know the gods were watching." He carried the baby home.
His wife, Yewande, gasped when she saw the royal clothes. "Where did you find him?" "By the Iroko tree," said Bamidele softly. "The gods gave him to us." They named the baby Uluwadara, which means God's gift. And so, while Prince Adewale grew up in the palace, proud and spoilt, Uluwadara grew up in the forest, kind and humble, loved by everyone around him. They never knew they were brothers, but destiny remembered. It was only waiting for the right time to speak.
Many years passed. In the royal palace, Prince Adewale grew tall and handsome, but proud. Servants bowed when he walked by, and no one dared tell him when he was wrong. He liked shiny things, grand clothes, and people who praised him. In the small village near the forest, Oluwadara grew strong too, but different. He helped the old, shared food with strangers, and laughed easily. Everyone loved him because he treated people kindly, no matter how poor or small. One morning, the king announced that there would be a great festival. It will be held in the palace square, and every family in the kingdom could come. There will be drummers, dancers, food, and contests of strength and skill. Oluwadara's foster father, Bamidele, decided to take him there. "You are a man now," he said proudly. "Go and see the palace. Maybe the king himself will notice your courage." Oluwadara smiled. "I only wish to see the town, father. I've never left the forest." They set out at sunrise, their sandals brushing the dust of the long road. The palace sparkled that day. Bright clothes hung from the towers and music filled the air. The crowd was huge. Men, women, children, all cheering as the prince walked through in gold and white. Adewale waved proudly, soaking in their praise. "Welcome, my people," he called, raising his hand high. Then he saw her, a maiden with the dancers. Her name was Simisola. She danced like a goddess. Her dance was smooth, and everyone looked at her, but could not explain why she felt different. When Prince Adewale saw her, his chest warmed. He stepped down and offered her a flower and a joke. The crowd loved his charm. Simisola smiled politely, though she did not look sure. The crowd continued to cheer the couple, but their eyes soon shifted. Someone else had entered the square. A tall young man with gentle eyes, dressed simply, but carrying himself with quiet strength. It was Uluwadara. He stood beside his father, watching in wonder. The drums, the color, the joy, it all felt like a dream. He did not wear silk. He wore a simple shirt and dusty sandals. But when Semisola looked at him, her face opened like a flower. She felt something kind and honest in him that made her heart calm. Both men watched her. Both men felt a pull they had never felt before. The prince felt it like a challenge. Uluwadara felt it like home. When his gaze finally met the prince's for the first time, something strange stirred inside both of them. They looked alike, so alike that people began to whisper, "Look at that boy. He looks like the prince's twin." The prince heard the murmur and frowned. "Who is that?" A guard bowed. "Just the hunter's son, my lord." Adewale's jaw tightened. He didn't like how people kept staring at the stranger instead of him. "Bring him here," he said. Oluwadara walked forward calmly. When he bowed, the prince stared hard at his face. The same eyes, the same smile, even the same small scar on the cheek, shaped like a crescent moon. "Where are you from?" Adewale asked coldly. "From the village near the great forest, my prince," Oluwadara said. "My father is a hunter. My mother grinds millet by the river." The prince nodded slowly, still staring. "You resemble me, almost too much." Oluwadara smiled kindly. "Then perhaps the gods wanted to confuse us." The crowd laughed softly, but the prince didn't. Something inside him burned, anger, jealousy, or maybe fear. "Let's see if the gods also give me my strength," he said. "We shall compete in the games."
The drums grew louder. First came the spear throw. The prince threw his spear far. The crowd cheered. But when Uluwadara threw his, it flew even farther and landed deep into the target. The prince's face darkened. Next came horse riding. Adewale rode fast, his robe flying behind him. But Uluwadara rode faster, smooth and easy like wind on grass. The crowd clapped and cheered louder for the hunter's son. At last came the test of wisdom. The king himself asked both young men a question. "Two travelers walk into the forest," he said. "One returns with gold, the other with a child who was crying alone. Which man did right?" The prince said quickly, "The one with gold. Gold feeds the kingdom." Oluwadara said softly, "The one with the child. Gold can be found again. A lost child cannot." The king looked at him for a long moment. Then he nodded. "Well spoken." The crowd erupted in applause. Adewale's face grew dark. He had never lost like this. His pride burnt and turned to anger, though his eyes were still fixed on Simisola. "Why don't you tell her how you feel?" the king said. Adewale went over to where she sat. "Simi," he said, "come live in the palace as my companion." He smiled, proud and sure. Simisola looked at him. The prince had gold and fine words. Uluwadara had honest eyes and a calm voice. Her face turned toward Uluwadara. She reached out and took his hand. "I'm sorry. I will go with him," she said softly. The prince turned away, furious. He stormed back to his chamber, his heart pounding with shame. That night, Queen Morenike found him pacing. "My son, what troubles you?" He looked at her sharply. "That hunter's boy. Everyone cheered for him. He looks like me. He even speaks like me. And now he's taking the only woman I desire." Morenike froze. "How dare the son of a nobody challenge you?" Her hands trembled as she called guards. That night, the palace guards arrested Uluwadara. They called it a scandal. They said the hunter's son had insulted the prince by taking the maiden's hand. The guards tied his wrist and led them to the palace dungeon. Simisola ran after them, screaming, "No, he did nothing wrong." But the prince had power. The royal family was quick to protect their honor.
Word of the arrest reached Bamidele and Yewande in the village like a blade. They hurried to the palace with shaking legs and tired feet. Bamidele's voice shook when he asked to see the king. "Your Majesty," he cried, "they have locked my son. He did not steal Simisola. He only asked for our heart." The guards pushed them away at first, but Bamidele would not leave the gate. He pounded on the heavy doors until someone took pity and listened. He begged and he told the same story he had told the day he found the child. How he had found the baby under the roku tree, wrapped in silk with a mark sewn on the cloth. He had kept the cloth and the small cloth seal safe in a wooden box all these years. At the dungeon, they brought Uluwadara forward. His face was calm, but his eyes were tired. The king had come to see for himself. The royal court watched like a river holding its breath. Bamidele stepped forward with the wooden box. He opened it and showed the king the cloth and the small royal seal, a tiny gold mark with the king's sign. The cloth was the same one the hunter had used to wrap the child when he first found him.
The king's hand trembled when he touched it. He looked from the cloth to the young man before him, and then to the faces in the crowd. The room spun for a moment. Hot, cold, all at once. A silence fell like night. The queen, Morenike, saw the cloth and the way the king's face changed. Her hands were white and small. The secret she had held like a stone in her chest felt ready to burst. The king spoke slowly and soft, his voice hardly more than a wind. "Who gave you this?" he asked Bamidele. Bamidele told the whole truth again, the way a man tells what he saw with his own eyes. He told how the baby had been cold and alone, and how he and his wife had wrapped him and loved him and raised him as their son.
The king's eyes went to Morenike. She could not stand. The room tilted for her. At last she could not hold the secret inside any longer. Tears came like rain. "My king," she cried, falling to her knees. "I did it. I switched the babies. I left the prince under the Iroko tree. I thought no one would know. I wanted the crown for my son." Her voice was small and broken. People leaned in to hear, like the earth leans to hear rain. Queen Fadesowa stood slowly, the color rushing to her face like sunrise. She looked at the young man the hunter had brought forward. Her hands flew to her mouth. "My son," she whispered. The old grief of the grave lifted off her shoulders and fell into joy. The king closed his eyes for a long moment. His face was a map of hurt and betrayal. Then he stood and spoke with the weight of the law and the truth. "Morenike," he said, "you have taken what was not yours. You have hurt many with your lie." His voice carried, "You will leave the palace. You will go to a house far from here and live away from the throne." Morenike's head hung low. She had taken the crown with her hands, and now she had to leave with only the shame she had sown. The guards led her away. The people watched, some angry, some sad. No one cheered. No one wept for her, as they had when she arrived. Then the courtyard filled with a different sound. It was a song that rose softly and then strong, the sound of people freed from a secret. The king turned to Oluwadara and embraced him tightly, tears shining in his eyes. "My son," he said, "you were stolen, but the gods brought you back. Forgive the hands that stole you. Will you accept the crown?" Oluwadara bowed. He thought of Bamidele and Yiwande, of the small house and the forest. He thought of Simisola's simple smile. He thought of the people who loved him when he had nothing. "Yes," he said, "I will lead with kindness. I will not forget where I came from." The crowd whooped and cheered like the sea. Drums beat like a heart. Flowers rained down. Queen Fadesowa wept and laughed. She held her long-lost son, weeping with happiness. And so the kingdom found peace again. Oluwadara ruled with kindness, remembering the forest that raised him and the hunter who saved his life. Adewale served by his side, wiser now, humbled by truth. And sometimes, when the night grew still and rain touched the palace roof, the wind carried a soft sound. 2 tiny cries from long ago, now resting in peace at last. Because destiny, though delayed, never forgets its way home.
Thank you for watching. If this story touched your heart, please like, share, and subscribe. And stay tuned for the next one.